Good morning, everyone. Welcome back into North Dakota today. Well, in pop culture, saying or talking about Fargo may get you thinking about wood chippers or even Jerry Lundegaard or our classic accent, but our next guest's book sheds a light on how kind, polite, and downright wholesome our community truly is. The author of How Fargo of You, Marc Celle, is here to share more. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we are so happy to have you. So you wrote this book a couple of years ago, and
Right.
you've had great success. Tell us about it.
Actually, it was a decade ago.
That's just a few years.
And it was, but it continues to sell, especially this time of year. A lot of copies sell. I'm from California and Arizona, and moved here when I was 50. And people kept doing things that were above and beyond the call of kindness. And I would find myself speechless. So, thank you didn't seem quite sufficient. How nice of you was kind of wimpy. And finally, I started using Fargo as an adjective for things. Oh, that's a pretty Fargo thing. And then finally, I figured out what to say when people would do these over-the-top kindnesses. And I started saying, how Fargo of you.
Wow.
And I collected the stories. And after about 5 years of it, I wrote the book. And it is the best-selling book about North Dakota of the 21st century.
Well, congratulations.
So, yeah, thank you.
Yes, that's wonderful. So, you know, you kind of talked about your inspiration for writing the book. What was it like really gathering material for it?
Well, material came to me. I never went out and gathered material. It was things that happened to me. So I need a doggy door in the house. I had met a carpenter at a concert by the band 32 Below. I called him up. He said, I'll come by after work. He's building a house. He comes by at 4 o'clock. I think he's just going to give me an estimate. He starts sawing a hole in the wall. 3 hours later, he had to make his own bolts because the wall was too thick for the bolts that came with the door. 3 hours later, I said, John, what do I owe you? He said, nothing. It's a housewarming gift.
Aww.
This is a guy I just met at a concert. So things like that kept happening to me, and that was how I came up with it, leaving me speechless. And that was how I finally came up with the expression, how Fargo view. And 5 years in, especially after the flood of '09, and hearing Mayor Wallaker say we need 1 million sandbags in a week, and the next day I'm watching TV and there's 10,000 well-organized volunteers. It was like, a world stranger than fiction to me. And so I wrote the stories, and people like it as an anecdote, the opposite of the fictional Fargo, with the crazy criminals with the goofy accents.
Yes.
And so How Fargo View is a real story of a real outsider coming in and experiencing the community for the first time.
Well, like you've said, you've had great success with this book, but I understand that you're working on a new project. Can you fill us in?
Sure. Yeah, I kept studying how did Fargo get to be this way, and I kept finding interesting stories. For instance, I knew a woman from Wyoming said, Mark, in Wyoming, if people live a half-mile away, you stay out of their business. It's the opposite of North Dakota, where when I was doing book signings and I'd have a line because so many people would want me to sign 10 books, so there'd be a line, this one's for Aunt Mary and this one's for somebody else. So I'd always hear the same conversation in the line. Well, I'm from Carrington. Where are you from? Oh, I'm from Castleton. Oh, well, do you know the Williamses? Oh, well, I knew a John Williams. Oh, yeah, I knew him. People are always having these same conversations around here, making these connections. And this woman told me, just over in Wyoming, it's the opposite. It's not like that. So this is not a small town thing. This is just a Fargo thing. And I got interested in how that was. Well, in Wyoming 150 years ago, they were all doing cattle, and they were all wrestling each other's cattle, and they were all shooting at each other. In Fargo and the Red River Valley 150 years ago, people had to help each other survive through the winter. And with the clay soil, most farmers could not farm it on their own. Everybody had to help everybody, or nobody was going to do well. So this culture of kindness has been around for a long time in the region. And the more I studied kindness, the more I realized it was a lot more important than we tend to give it credit. And so the new book I've got, and you can go to transformativekindness.org and see the very beginnings of it. But it's about about the critical role and the important role that kindness has played in the beneficial forward progress of the human race. In fact, most beneficial human forward progress has taken place not the way we think of when we study wars and these things. It actually takes place because of kindness. From Florence Nightingale bringing medicine into the modern age by insisting that hospital patients be kept clean, to transforming Europe after World War II with maybe the largest act of kindness in human history, the Marshall Plan, where we threw billions of dollars into Europe for decades. And Europe used to be the most violent subcontinent on Earth for thousands of years, not just in the 20th century with World War I and World War II. And it's now the most peaceful place and cooperative group of nations in human history. So that was done with kindness. And so that's what this book is about. It's all these stories of what I call transformative kindness, where kindness done a certain way brings about transformation in individual lives or in entire continents. And I think kindness is our greatest underutilized resources as a species. And I'm hoping that this book maybe might help change that.
Well, what a perfect topic for a book. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Well, and it's what I learned from Fargo. It's what Fargo taught me.
Certainly. All right, so how can people check out your new project?
Just go to transformativekindness.org. If you forget and you do transformativekindness.com, that'll still go there. But it is kind of naturally already turning into the beginnings of a nonprofit. So that's why I decided to put it under transformativekindness.org.
Wonderful.
And the book, I'm actually going to take a page from Charles Dickens, who wrote, Christmas Carol. And when he wrote A Tale of Two Cities, which is his greatest novel, he actually serialized it. So every chapter went out in a newsletter to people who subscribe to the newsletter. So I'm doing that with Transformative Kindness. And so starting in January, the first chapter is going to be serialized off my website. So if you're interested in reading it chapter by chapter, that would be the place to go, would be to transformativekindness.org.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, and best of luck on this new venture.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate your having me on.
Of course. All right, everyone, stick around. We have much more North Dakota Today yet to come.